Yo, what's good, guys? We are back at it again for the final time this year, doing a little bit of an award show. You can see we've got the Sunday best on. Just going over my favorite sets of the year, some of my favorite cards of those sets of the year, and overall what I thought of the game this year. As well as a little special thank you for some of you guys at the very end if you do stick around for that. So before we get into it, this did take a while to make. It might not look like that, but I promise you, it took multiple hours to put this list together and get everything formatted. So a subscription would be greatly appreciated. Um, what better way to end the year to celebrate Christmas time than to go over it and just take a walk down memory lane, revisit, have some nostalgia about some of my favorite cards of the year. And yeah, guys, let's get into it. So we're gonna start at the start of the year, set one. Definitely when the most people were on the game. A lot of people. There was a mass exodus after this set, but I'm gonna do my best to revisit it and bring us back to some of the more memorable times this year. So my third favorite hitter of set one, this Griffey card. One of the best cards I used all year. I think he hit like over 500 for me easily. His swing is so good. His stats were unbelievable compared to every other card in the game when he came out. Unfortunately, he came out at the very end of the set, so you didn't even get to use him that much. I think you maybe got a week out of this card, maybe 2 weeks, if you went and got him day one. But he was extremely good and extremely impactful for the short amount of time he was out there. Number two for me, WBC Mike Trout. Possibly has the best swing in the game. He was a defensive liability, but the card was insane. Hits better than the Milestone Trout does for me. And there's honestly, the swing is so good on this card. There's an argument to run him over the Milestone Trout if you really like it. It's just the defense is a little bit poor, but he was an extremely memorable card. Carried my offense a lot at the start of the year. He was unbelievable. And then number one, I think we all know who number one's going to be. It's Chipper Jones. This still has an argument for being the best card in the game. Stats-wise, when this card came out, it's just not fair. In retrospect, when you compare this Chipper with the collection reward one from like 3 years ago, 2 years ago, whatever it was, this one blows that one out the water, and this one was basically free for everybody to get. This card's crazy. It was so good. In retrospect, his averages have dropped below that Trout for me, but that's because I used Chipper for the whole year. And Chipper had to deal with much harder pitchers than that Trout had to deal with. So, speaking of pitchers, moving on to my favorite pitchers of that season, Bob Gibson. Probably I would put him in an overrated category if I did it. I thought of doing that, but it'd be so many more slides, it just wasn't worth it. He is very good, but a lot of people had him as their favorite pitcher of that season. When I just don't see it like that. I think his control was a little suspect on higher difficulties, and really only have him at third because his competition was very, very limited. But he was still a decent card, especially for the time when he came out. Number two, Roki. Most people didn't see the true potential of this card. Obviously, he did have two outliers, but when you throw a 90-mile-an-hour forkball and a 92-mile-an-hour cutter, you're going to give up a lot of home runs. So, unfortunately, Roki was best on Legend difficulty, and a lot of people didn't even get to see him on that difficulty. But he was very, very good and has an argument for coming back come set 6. And then number one for me, one of the more underrated cards of the year, I think. This Pedro was unbelievable for me. The curveball's terrible, but everybody's curveball's terrible. He topped out the most of any pitcher I've seen all year. I think I saw more 103 mile an hour and 104 mile an hour pitches from him than anybody else, and I still think he might have the best cutter in the game. If you missed this card, you missed a gem. A lot of people think he's trash for some reason. I still like him a lot. He just, doesn't stack up to a lot of the pitchers that we've gotten for the whole year. But Pedro was one of my favorite cards. This next category is interesting. I'm calling it the demons, guys that haunt you, guys where if they were in your opponent's lineup, they went a little stupid and might have cost you a game. So I've got WBC Santander and WBC Lindor here. These were just two cards where if they were in your opponent's lineup, they were hitting a home run every game, driving in multiple runs. I once saw this Lindor hit 3 triples in a game at Laughing Mountain. And he's not even a fast card. Like, he's just a demon. everybody loved this Lindor. A lot of people really liked this Santander when it came out. I thought of putting Yohan Moncada on here, but I decided to limit it to only 2 players. So, moving on to set 2, one of the better sets of the year. Not my personal favorite, but it was a decent set, and there was still a decent player base around the game at that time. My third place hitter is Josh Donaldson. He is going to barely beat out David Wright. Me personally, I like Josh Donaldson's swing way more than David Wright. David Wright was very good and probably the worst collection reward in retrospect, but he was still a very good card. I just like Josh Donaldson way more. I finally get the hype about his swing. He never really, before this, had a card that was good enough to fit into the meta. This guy was a freak at third base, very good at first base as well, and even played a halfway decent shortstop. He was a nasty card for his time, and he still has an argument to be used. Hank Aaron, one of the better hitting cards of the year. I feel like everybody I saw with this Hank Aaron hit very, very well with him, even though he had push hitter tendency and had those small inside timing windows. This card was just a freak, and honestly, could have an argument for number 1 for, I feel like, a vast majority of people, because a lot of people didn't hit very well with this number 1 card. But for me personally, there's just no way I could put Hank over him. And that would be Mickey Mantle, the Commerce Comet. This card was insane. He brought a level of outfield defense that we had not seen for the year, and it's still hard to rival. There's only a couple of center fielders in the game that play defense as well as Mickey does. Stats-wise, he's almost perfect, just missing a little bit of power, and he has basically every hitting quirk in the game. This card makes pretty much every God Squad in the game if you do enjoy his swing, and even if you don't, he still plays such good defense that it's hard to not justify having a switch hitting center fielder that plays defense the way this card does in your lineup. He is a freak and one of the better cards that we saw all year. Moving on to the pitchers. Aaron Loup is here. The pitchers for this set will probably be controversial because you're not going to see a guy like Verlander on here. I know a lot of people did enjoy him. I just feel like the value you got with some of the relief pitchers in this set was higher than what Verlander brought to a team. So, Loup, probably the best lefty specialist we've seen all year. This card was a freak when he came out. There was an adjustment period where people just could not touch this card, and he is still very dominant up until today. Number 2, Mo, arguably the best righty reliever we got all year. So he is elite for his value. He was basically shut down when he came in the game. I think the only thing that hurt him is that Kenley was also in the game at the exact same time with the exact same pitch mix as him. So a lot of people got comfortable hitting off that pitch mix, but Mo was still very, very elite at that time. And then number 1, we all know who it's going to be. It's the big man, Randy. You could argue this is the best version of Randy we got all year. It's really just personal preference, but I like this one more. I think this card ruined a lot of people's days when he came out. I could not believe this card was coming out, a month and a half into the game cycle. I figured they'd wait a little longer for Randy, but, he came out and he was just as dominant as he's ever been. I think he didn't feel quite as dominant this year to a lot of people just because they were used to seeing him from last year. But he was still very, very elite, especially with some of the pitching woes that we had at the start of the year. Set 2 demons, guys that, a lot of people I played against raked with. This Ian Kinsler, you almost never saw him, but when you did, they were demons with him. He was hitting doubles left and right, slapping home runs. So he was a super demon for me. And then Kyle Schwarber. Most people ran this Schwarber at catcher on the durability team, and he just hit taters. He was an absolute dog. And honestly, if you really like his swing, he could still have an argument for playing, assuming you use him on the durability team. On to set 3. In my opinion, one of the better sets of the year by far. Probably up there for peak player base. I wish we had stats for that to where we could see it. But judging by like Xbox group posts and stuff like that, I feel like set 3 was just before the game started to go a little downhill. Third place, J-Ram. when J-Ram's in third place, you know it was an insane season. Absolutely just godly card that you could get from for free from doing Team Affinity. I love this card. He is still on my team to this day, but I do recognize that some of the other cards that came out in this season were just as good, if not better. So moving on, second, Adley Rutschman. When you get the best catcher in the game in this set, he's got a place in the top three. And for me, I think Adley's more valuable at his position than J-Ram is at his position. So for that, that's kind of the tiebreaker for me to put Adley second and J-Ram third. And then first place, it's Elly De La Cruz. One of the only cards I think that have an argument with Chipper Jones for being like the best card in the game, with Mickey Mantle for being the best card in the game. An absolute freak, a switch hitting shortstop that's like 6'9" and just is a vacuum cleaner and gets to everything, as well as having a good enough swing with very, very good attributes and making almost every captain team you would want to run. This card was a freak, and he was a problem all year. He still is, and he's going to be good for years to come in the show. Moving on to pitchers. Third, I have Skeens. I forget exactly who he just barely beat out. It was not Nolan Ryan, I don't think. I think Nolan Ryan was set 2. I think there was somebody very solid. I just decided to leave off the list between him and Skeens. But I think more people had more success with Skeens. You saw this card all the time. And he had a very good, very effective pitch mix with an outlier fastball. He was very good, especially for his time. Second, I have Outlier. Arguably, maybe my best pitcher of the year. My sample size is a little skewed, but absolutely shut down every time I've ever pitched him. Still in my rotation to this day. Love this card so much. But unfortunately, it's hard to beat number one on the list. You guys know who it is. It's the Don. It's John Don. He just kind of broke the game when he came out, throwing a 97-mile-an-hour sinker from a weird release point, throwing an outlier slider, something we had never seen up until that point, and throwing an outlier fastball with a forkball that's like almost 30 miles an hour slower than the fastball. It's crazy. Absolutely insane card with insane pitch mix. Arguably, if his through nines were better, I think he would be the best pitcher we've ever seen in the show's history. The only thing hurting him is the control and the nerfs to pinpoint. If pinpoint was like it was in like MLB The Show 21, this card would be untouchable. And he's definitely on the Mount Rushmore of DD pitchers. Set 3 Demons, guys that, tore me up a ton playing ranked. If you saw one of these guys, your opponent was going to hit a home run with them. The Devers card in particular cost me my only BR run of the year I really sweated on and was 11-0 in. He hit a home run to cost me that run. So I do remember that card, and I do not look back at him very fondly. And then Jock Peterson, very similar card. The only thing that hurt that card is a lot of people just played him in center field, which was a terrible spot for him. But at first base or in the corner outfield spots, he was a nasty card and hit a ton of home runs. Moving on to set 4. My third place is Juan Soto. Yes, he is more of a DH than an outfielder, but you got to keep in mind, set 4 looks very loaded when you go back and look at it, but so many of those cards came out towards the very end of set 4. When the game was kind of already dead, that I'd rather have Juan, somebody that was there for most of the season and produced very well. As be it a DH or a corner outfielder, he was very good. Second place, Mookie Betts. Name a better infield duo at the time than Elliott Short and this guy at second. Unlimited double plays turned. He was so good. The power was a little lackluster, and he did fly out a lot, but in right field, he was elite. At second base, he was elite, made the shortstop team. There was not a lot to hate on about this Mookie Betts. In retrospect, probably the best collection award from that season. And then first, Mike Trout, one of the better chase cards we got all year. Wasn't around for a ton of set 4, if I remember right. He did kind of come out more towards the end of it than the start. But stats-wise, up there with one of the best Trouts we've ever gotten. Makes the durability team, which makes him just even more of a god. This card was nasty. If he had the WBC Mike Trout swing, it would be over. It would be my favorite card in the game by far. Moving on to pitchers of set 4. Third, I have Kershaw. I didn't even use this card this much, but I heard that he was just nasty. When I faced him, he was decent enough, and really the competition wasn't super there for set 4. There was a couple other guys you could argue, but again, I would argue that longevity argument where this card was good up until basically almost the end of the game. You used him through set 4, and you used him all the way through set 5. Longevity wise, this card was nasty. He was, I believe, a team affinity reward. If not, he was like one of the stepping stone collection rewards. This card was so good, and you got a lot of life out of this card if you grinded him early in on that season. Number 2, Kluber. He was the other collection reward that I think was most worth it, along with Mookie. I think Fox is firmly in third place at this point. Kluber, not quite to his like standards of like to MLB 2017 or one of those years where he was unhittable, and a lot of that has to do with the sinker nerf this year where their pars were so big. That being said, still an outstanding pitcher and a crazy control freak, along with having sneaky velocity. He's not going to throw a 99-mile-an-hour fastball by you. But his velocity was higher than, most of the other control freaks we got for the year. And then this should not say third. This should say first. So there's a mistake, but we'll roll with it. Randy here. I don't like this Randy as much as the other Randy, but, any version of Randy is still a top 3. And for this season, a number 1 pitcher that came out that season. He was a chase card, so another good chase card that we got for the year. This card was pretty nasty and has an argument for being the best version of Randy we got all year. I just prefer the Incognito one more. Set 4 Demon cards. Santana was an absolute stud for a lot of people. I didn't really love him too much throughout the entire year. Something about a swing, but a lot of people absolutely loved him, and every time I went up against him, he hit a home run off me. Another card that was a lot more slept on, but if somebody had him in their lineup, you knew they were a freak. You knew they were going to go crazy with him, was Mike Moustakas. Had like second base, had third base. He was a very good card, and I know his swing was very good, but it just did not make sense how successful he was against me in set 4. Moving on to set 5, our most recent set. Probably the most recent in memory for a lot of you guys, or you just skipped the set and now you're back on the game. So for me, third place, Corey Seager. This card is nasty. He is arguably stats-wise maybe the best third baseman in the game, just because his speed hurts him a lot at shortstop. But when this card came out, you just could not imagine better cards than this coming out that season. But there were some. There definitely were some, and it kind of pushes him back to third. Second, Acuna, our reigning unanimous MVP of the league. His All-Star card barely missed out on the set 3 awards. He was like behind J-Ram and probably one other person. This card, basically perfect. If you superfractor this card, you are looking at an absolutely insane card. You're looking at like 99 speed, 99 arm, good enough reaction, maxed out contact, close to maxed out power, max out stealing. Like, this card is a freak on paper. His swing is hit or miss for people, but I think he is one of the better cards we got all year. And as far as primary right fielders go, you're not going to find anybody better. Moving on to number 1, Cody Bellinger. It hurt my soul to leave the monthly one off of my set 3. But, with just how stacked set 3 is, it's hard to argue for him. Although he is kind of in that Griffey boat with me, where one of the few batters to hit over 500 for me all year. This version of his card, this finest one, is basically just that card with 10, 15 more power, and a little bit more speed. So Overall, an upgrade over the monthly one, without a doubt. My starting first baseman for the rest of the year, assuming I don't need a first baseman for a captain boost. Also, very good in right field, very good in left field. Would probably not run him in center, but stat wise, probably the best Bellinger we've ever gotten, and probably ever will get. This is on par with like the finest Bellinger from his MVP season. Absolutely insane card. Pitchers, third place, Blake Snell. This is probably up there with season one for being the weakest amount of pitchers we got. And it was very obvious if you ever peruse the marketplace in set five for a new starter to pick up, there weren't any. They kind of just stopped coming out with pitchers, and as a result, we have Blake Snell here. This is the best Snell we've ever gotten. His pitch mix is very good, but that being said, Blake Snell just isn't very good. Second place, Senga. The control really hurt him. Has a dominant pitch mix and throws very hard, but does not have outlier. So really, the control hurts him a lot. If he had better control or if he had outlier, he would be a disgusting card. First place, Scuball. Basically just upgraded Clayton Kershaw. Love Scuba Steve. He is a stud and a Tigers player, which is a plus for me. Absolutely love him. Have loved him since last year. I think this card is possibly one of the more underrated starters in the game. I feel like if you ask somebody to name their best 5 starting pitchers of the year, he's almost never going to pop up. Whereas I feel like he should be in that conversation for sure. Set 5 Demons. If you saw these cards, they were hitting a home run off of you. You got Dansby Swanson. Something about his swing and that just slap swing. A lot of people absolutely loved him. And he went crazy for a lot of people. Also, Ketel Marte, a card that I painfully had to admit from multiple seasons. I think he was in season 1 for the running of my favorite cards. Season 3, he was in the running for my favorite cards. And this season, he was up there. Maybe the most consistent guy all year with his cards being released, like top tier. Like every Marte that came out this year was a disgusting card to use. And very good for the time they came out. Best set of the year. You can see I have this little collage here. This is all the cards we got in set 3 that I thought were just gross. Like, set 3 was by far the best set of the year, in my opinion. I mean, look at these cards. J-Ram, that's an end of the year God Squad player. Adley Rutschman, the best catcher in the game. You got Simeon. Simeon super slept on. If that playoff one didn't come out, you could still be running that one, and he would be top tier. DeGrom, still a very good pitcher. Did not live up to the hype that a lot of people thought he would, me included, but he is still objectively very good. Ellie, the best shortstop of the year. Austin Riley, honestly, has an argument for the best third baseman of the year. Leiter, he's in the best rotation. That Acuna, I don't know why you would use him at this point unless you just didn't grind out the other one, but he's still very, very, very good. Dylan Cruz was a lot of people's favorite outfielder of the year when he was there. That Devers card, I say he was a demon. I meant it. He hit so many home runs. Skeens was in the list. The monthly Bellinger, maybe my favorite card of the year. John Donaldson. Extreme Griffey came out that season, although a lot of people probably didn't grind him until much later. Roy Halladay, super good. McCutchen, super fun player to use. That Juan Soto was nasty on the durability team. Dustin May, super good. Billy Wagner, was probably, I think when he came out, he was the only awesome lefty specialist in the game. Set 3 was an unreal set, and my vote for by far the best set of the year. Although I wish more people were there to experience it because the game was kind of waning and slowing down at that point. Without a doubt, I think my favorite set of the year. Things that I enjoyed this year that I think the game did really, really well. I think this is the least fluky year I've seen of the show since I've played it. I've played MLB The Show since like MLB 14, and I've played it semi-competitively since like 16, 17. There were almost no times where you just got absolutely screwed by bloopers or very late hits or very early hits. For the most part, they didn't really happen that much, and when they did happen, They very, very, very rarely chain together. This is coming from the perspective of somebody that played almost all their games this year on Hall of Fame and Legend. But even when I hop in events, it's not that bad. I do notice it does happen more on lower difficulties, but in general, I think this might be the best year I've ever seen for not hitting a ton of lineouts and not giving up a bunch of bloopers and just terrible hits. I think they've kind of improved the skill gap in that regard. You still do get those unfortunate games, but they are not nearly as common as they used to be. New stadiums. Say what you will about the stadiums. I enjoyed them. Even like Capitol Lane, probably my most hated field of the year. I'm still glad it's in the game. I'd rather have it be in the game than out the game. Um, as long as we're not getting created stadiums next year that are like Costco, then we're chilling and I'm fine with it. And I am here for them bringing in new stadiums. I do wish they would help the aesthetic a little bit because you can tell that it's just a stadium that they built in the stadium builder that's in the game. I would like it to be a little more refined, a little more professional looking, but in general, that's a small complaint. The captain glitch, I think that's awesome. You're giving people a way to boost their cards without like having to hamper their lineups by a ton. I think the captain glitch is almost the only thing that went right about captains this year because it was such a niche and not really well utilized thing. The captain glitch makes it more universal for people to do, and I like that. Fixing co-op. I say partially because at the start of the year, no matter what your rating was, it was always on All-Star. And that sucked. That was super infuriating because I went into the first season wanting to make World Series in co-op. I was like, yeah, this is going to be fun. This is going to be a cool little grind to do with some of my boys. It wasn't. It wasn't because after you got to like 700, 800 rating, you just started playing guys that weren't very good on higher difficulties, but they were just all-star demons. They just fouled off everything until you eventually have to throw them a strike, and then they bang it. And that turned into every single co-op game until they fixed the difficulty. So I do like that they did fix that, but it was unfortunate that for around about a quarter of the year, co-op was like that. Sinkers being patched. This is probably the worst I've seen sinkers be in my like MLB The Show career. Since like Edward Cabrera came in the game and just broke the game with his outlier sinker. The sinker's been like the best pitch in the game ever since then. It is still a good pitch and still a very effective pitch, but I wouldn't call it the best pitch in the game. I think them bumping the pars on sinkers, especially high in the zone, was a good idea because it is a very dominant pitch and it still is kind of wonky with the timing windows. The fact that they were able to tune that down and make it less of a problem is a dub for me. Chase packs. Chase packs were say what you will about pay to win. I saw a conversation about that earlier in the year. Don't really want to get into it because if you're smart about your stubs, then I don't think stubs are really an issue in the game at any point. But I think the chase pack quality this year was way higher than it's ever been in the past. You look at last year, the first year of chase packs, Pujols was an insane card at the very start of the year. Could have made a God Squad up until probably 3 months into the game. That card was super nasty. And then other than that, I can't even think of that many more. They came out with that J-Rod that was terrible. Nolan Ryan was like the card you wanted to pull out of chase packs for the rest of the year. It was bad. Chase packs were not implemented well last year. We only got a couple of them. This year we got 10 of them. I feel like that's an awesome number. A lot of the chase cards that we got were very impactful players that impacted the game in a meaningful way. You had Randy, you had Mickey, you had Ellie, you had Joe Mauer, who was very, very good when he came out. He's kind of a slept-on card at this point now. Harper was very good. A lot of the chase cards were super fire, awesome cards that impacted the game a lot, and at least there was a lot of hype around them when they came out compared to last year. Sets 1 through 3, I thought went well. We can have the sets conversation if you guys want to. I'm here for it, and I'm here against it. I hear both sides of the argument. My main perspective is the grinders still get mostly rewarded. The grinders still get most of the cards in the game, so I don't hate that. But it also appeals more to the casual audience, in my opinion, because a lot of people were like, "Oh, I can't use JT Realmuto anymore." I remember that being a comment from the very start of the year. I'm done with the game. I grinded hard for that Realmuto. In reality, that Realmuto was like a 50K card, and you can make 50K in no time if you just play the game right. So I don't see that, but I do get what people are saying about having to remake their whole lineup. When in reality, any sports game, you're always upgrading your lineup. You're always working towards that next step. You don't really want to sit with a stagnant lineup for the whole year. So I don't really see that argument. My main argument for sets would be like that Mike Trout card from the start of the year, that Chipper Jones from the start of the year would have been unattainable for 90% of the player base. You're not getting that. If you think you're getting that Trout at the very start of the year as like a pure no money spent player that doesn't grind that much, you are high. It's not happening. Chipper Jones, I said it in the video earlier. He is comparable, if not better, than the collection one that we got 3 years ago. That was basically a free card if you went and grinded out Team Affinity and grinded out Tops Now. That was a free godly card that's still one of the best cards in the game that you can use. And that was a free card. So I think early implementation of sets was a positive thing. Think it helped the casual player base a lot without really hurting the super competitive grinder player base. So I think sets were a good idea early in the year. Towards the end of the year, it started to get bad, and we'll talk about that in the next slide, things that went wrong. But in general, I enjoyed sets. I thought they were a kind of breath of fresh air for the franchise, and I didn't mind it. There is just, a glaring problem with the sets. Collections, I think collections were a dub for kind of the reason mentioned a second ago, where they were more accessible, right? You could not argue to me that in any one season you couldn't get one collection card. If you went and grinded your Tops Now, it was usually like 70 cards or something like that. And then a partial grind of Team Affinity easily got you 90, 95 cards. So that's like 150 right there. I think the highest season total was like 140 or 160. I think that was like the first season. So other than the first season, collections were super obtainable. Everybody could get one. And usually there was one clear option that was just better than all of the other ones. Mini seasons. I think mini seasons were the most rewarding they have been since they've been implemented since last year. I made 3 or 4 videos on how you can easily make over 100K by running through a mini season. In reality, it's kind of because it is like a 6-hour grind, but in general, if you were an offline player, it was one of the best ways offline to make stubs. So I think mini seasons were dope. The end of the year shop that we are currently experiencing right now, I think that's a huge plus. The fact that any card in the game you want, for the most part, is in the store and pullable. You can just buy chase packs if you want to do that. I would not advise you to do that. I would say just go buy the player. But if you want to chase that high, if you want to just buy chase packs, I like it. I think that's a good thing that that's in there. The thing I'm alluding to more is the captains. If you want any captain in the game, with the exception of the pre-order bonus, which was sold with the pretense of being exclusive, so I don't really mind it, then you can go get any captain. Rollins and Ripken are both in there for like 20, 25K. So that gives you access to the 2 best captains in the game. There is no pay-to-win element to having captains anymore. You could argue there kind of was before. Now it's out the window. Everybody can have the best lineup in the game. There's nothing holding you back. And my final point that I really enjoyed this year was events. I think this is the best year of events. I think they implemented them very well. Separate 12 win rewards for events was a super hype thing and a super good way for good players to make stubs, as well as incentivizing more people to play events, whereas before, events was kind of an afterthought. Most people were in BR or ranked. I know a lot of people this year that only played events, and there's nothing wrong with that because I think they were implemented very, very well this year. So I did enjoy those. Things that I did not enjoy this year. No off-the-wall ribbon. I've said it multiple times. I don't like calling for people's jobs, but whoever thought that was a good idea should be fired. That is probably the most infuriating thing I've seen all year. Go play at Fenway and watch your opponent just hit beamers off the left field wall, and they bounce 8 times into center field and take a weird angle that you couldn't have possibly expected. Or like you hit one down the line and it skips into foul territory and it rolls up against the bleachers, and you can't tell if it's going to just stop on the wall or if it's going to ricochet off, and there should be off the wall ribbons. I get kind of the argument. I think in previous years it was turned off by default and you had to go turn it on, but anybody that was good at the game had it on, especially with parks like kind of Ship It. Ship It has some bad bounces, but mainly any field with a huge wall, no off the wall ribbon is just a miserable experience and gives up like way more triples and inside the parks than it ever possibly should. Um, BRs being non-sale, they made that decision early on in the year. That was a awful decision in my opinion, because it killed a lot of people that were not awesome at the game, but also not bad at the game. It killed a lot of the way that they make their stubs. They looked forward to playing BR on refresh, and maybe not winning every game, and maybe they wouldn't even win 9 in 1 entry and get that like 20-point progress, but they would just win one game at a time and do their PXP goals, and they got banked for doing that, and they got rewarded for their time if that was something they wanted to do. Them absolutely nuking that sucked. And from like a 12-win player perspective, right? Because I don't like BR, but I'm sure I could go 12-0 multiple times throughout a year if I wanted to. Um, I think you still get rewarded, especially early in the year, because you are getting an auctionable version of that 12-win card, which I think were like between 60 and 90K earlier in the year. And then you saw Griffey was like way up. So you're getting that card to sell, which is a decent amount. And then you're getting a high overall Live Series Diamond prior to the first few roster updates. You're looking at like a DeGrom for like 200K. You're looking at like a Trout for 300K. You're looking at like Aaron Judge for like 150K. Mookie Betts was like 150K. I think Trey Turner might have been a high diamond at the start of the year. You're getting paid. You're still getting rewarded for going 12-0. So I don't really understand why they decided to make it non-sale. I think that was one of the dumbest decisions they made all year, and I don't think that was a good idea. Captains were poorly implemented. When the best way to use captains is to glitch it so you don't have to use the captain, it's a bad system. I think the worst thing is like theme teams. A lot of people were thinking of captains more as like theme teams from Madden. The fact that you can't use any player, past or present, that played for that team is infuriating, right? Like if I wanted to run a Tigers team, I would love for Luis Gonzalez to be on the team at somewhere, but he can't be because he's a D-backs player and he only contributes to a D-backs boost. I think that would be a huge thing for captains. I think I saw Samuel Adams tweeted about it. He said that we should have got 99 overall finest captains, a captain that was the finest player for that team that boost all of the players that played for that team by a ton, to make theme teams more viable at the end of the year. I would be down for that. I think that's a great idea. So I think captains were pretty poorly implemented this year. Did not enjoy that too much. Sets 4 through 5. This is where the game died. This is where, when Madden and 2K came out, you heard everybody say, "Oh, I'm going to that. This game is dead. It's cooked." No, not really. The viewership was still decent, and you still had people interested in playing the game, and people that enjoyed baseball, and people that identified with MLB The Show as a top 1 or 2 game that they enjoyed playing. They were still here. When sets 4 and 5 came out, the game kind of died. The idea of, we can jump down a little bit. The idea of doing a team affinity grind for the 4th time this year, where it is a grind that takes objectively between like 10 and like 18 hours, depending on how good you are at the game, is not fun. And people don't enjoy wasting that much of their time over and over. At the start of the year, when you're getting some very good cards to use, that's cool. In set 3, when it was for Jose Ramirez, that's cool. But in general, it's just like, yeah, Bellinger is elite. Bellinger is a super great card. But who's looking to put 15 hours of their time into Team Affinity for a game that is kind of dead at this point? And really, it's only diehards and people coming back into the game to play. I don't know too many people that are looking to do that. I did it because I'm a sicko, but not everybody's me. No grinder collection. I hated that. As a guy that did Mickey Mantle last year, I did Brett, I did whoever the second one, McCutcheon, and then I did Rollins, and I took like a 2.5 month break last year. And guess what? The first thing I did when I got back on the game was I went and grinded for Mickey Mantle. I played event games for Mickey. I played ranked and sweated for Mickey. Mickey Mantle, if you don't know, if you are new, was like 54 million stubs to finish last year. I did them. I did them. I had like half of it. I had a huge grind ahead of me, and it was super fun because Mickey Mantle was an unbelievably rare card. Nobody owned that card because you had to have basically every single card in the game to have. And I get that's not for everybody, but there should be a reward for that. I should not get a Godest banner and 75k and a 50 bundle for having basically every card in the game. That's not rewarding somebody's time. That's not rewarding the grind that they put into it. There needs to be that top tier grinder thing, that exclusive club you can get into. And it sucks that that wasn't really a thing this year. The closest you're going to get is having Pedro Martinez. That sucks. That's not a good feeling. Next thing, co-op slider. The fact that you can't do a slider in co-op, and I'm sitting here with my boy who's also like a top 50-ish player, and we're just backing out every time the slider gets 200 rating below us because we play anybody that's that much further below us, we're going to get like 2 points for beating them. Not a good feeling. The co-op slider needs to be adjustable. It needs to be movable. The fact that you have to sit here and back out multiple times in a row and hope the game doesn't glitch and freeze the lobby, and then you have to do a new lobby and pick all your players again. So that was a hassle. Did not enjoy that at all. Programs I have as a negative. Yeah, our monthly programs were good, but when are they not? The monthly programs are always good. This year you couldn't really make any money off of them. Last year you made a ton off of them. This year I would argue the cards were better, so I did enjoy the monthlies. But all the other programs kind of sucked. Roberto Clemente, who wants him? Nobody wants him. There was a lot of hype around the captain when he came out just because it was Lindor. Nobody uses that captain anymore. Moonshot was like the worst program ever. Like, you're basically spitting in our face. Kyle Schwarber and Josh Donaldson expired just the season before that, and you just give us two significantly worse versions of their cards that nobody's looking to use in the same program. Father's Day program, that was a joke. Nobody touched any of the cards from that program. The Future Stars program was pretty trash. And that's just me scraping, the top of the bear, skimming, whatever the saying is. That's just the start of it. There's way more worse programs throughout the year. The only programs I would say were awesome are the recent ones. The finest one, super cool. It's a short grind for probably the best second baseman in the game. The Willie Mays one, short grind for a top 5 outfielder in the game. The WBC one at the start of the year was an awesome way for a lot of people to get good cards. You could make a WBC team at the start of the year and compete with God Squads. It was an awesome program. It was worth your time. It was worth doing. You had a chance at getting Trout or Miggy or whoever you wanted out of it. So I think that was one of the better programs of the year. But I think as a whole, programs were pretty disappointing this year. I think they ended the content cycle too early. I think we should have got a full set 6 into early, mid-January. Who says no? It wouldn't be that hard. The fact that the game is just completely cooked at this point, I did not expect. I don't know if they've just been super upfront that set 6 would be nothing, but the fact that the only card I think we're going to get for the rest of the year is a cover athlete is severely disappointing. I expected at least something like last year where you're getting a refresh on BR and a refresh on World Series. Like, how hard is that to implement, to do like a new Roy Halladay for World Series? Bro has gotten one decent card all year, and you can't, just refresh him as a set 6 World Series reward, along with like maybe Eddie Matthews, who got like one good card all year. Maybe you give the people a chipper because you don't want them to go back and grind that other stuff. There was rumors about a mantle. Like, there's cards. Lou Gehrig got one decent card all year. People like that could easily use a second card. McCutcheon's card was mid when he came out. He didn't have great power. Wasn't super fast. Like, there's so many cards like that where you could easily just, recycle them, bump them up by a couple attributes or something. Or maybe in like a Mickey's case, you make them slightly worse. Something like that. It's not hard to do. It would take minimal effort from SDS, and next year better be a good game if they're pulling the content team this early. Not a huge fan of that at all. Team Affinity, already touched on, just way too much of a grind. Road to the Show, basically the exact same as last year, except more confusing. The amount of comments I got on my Road to the Show like grind videos earlier in the year of people not knowing how to like upgrade their archetype. The archetype, you would get to like 100 points in the program and it wouldn't automatically change. So a lot of people just sat there and grinded the same archetype for 8 hours and saw no progress. That was pretty poorly implemented, I'll be honest, but it was very similar to last year, which is great for me, right? Because it's very rewarding. It gave a ton of XP, it gave a ton of stubs very early in the year. I grinded every single archetype you could possibly grind early in the year, and it made me a gazillion stubs. I had Derek Jeter on like the fourth day of the game being out as a no money spent player just because I grinded the Road to the Show like crazy. So I think it's very good from a grinder's perspective, but from somebody that is trying to play the game for fun, Road to the Show is just not a super fun experience, and it's basically the same as it has been for the last like 3 years. You have your little mini games. Your manager talks to you occasionally and gives you a small boost. If you do well, you're going to get called up in no time. It's not super fun. It's not a fun experience. I think they need to overhaul it again because it's just not really worth it. And then my final one is Pinpoint. God knows Pinpoint was just terrible at the start of the year. The worst it's ever been by a country mile. It was awful. And it's still not great. It is objectively still not great. I know people that are top 50 players, that are close to top 50 players that use analog because they don't feel like Pinpoint's worth doing. Because if you miss it all with Pinpoint, they throw it right down the middle. And then even if you throw a perfect, a lot of times it lands on the corner of the strike zone and it's called a ball. So it's not super rewarding, whereas you can just use pure analog, which is objectively significantly easier to use, especially at higher difficulties. And as long as you're not butchering your release, they'll never leave it right down the middle. Usually it misses in a small area around where you wanted to throw it. So I think Pinpoint was pretty poor this year. And it got better, but it's not to where it needs to be for how difficult it is, especially on higher difficulties. On All-Star, I think it's kind of more or less balanced, but on something like Legend, where I have to be throwing a 97% accurate fastball within .02 timing and within 1 degrees, I think it's got to be more rewarding. And yeah, guys, that's coming to the end. There's one more special slide. I'd say the game was an 8 out of 10. It was all right. That was not the special slide. This is the special slide. What a crazy year it's been on the channel. I just want to thank all you guys. It means a ton. First year on the game. I don't know what I expected necessarily. I knew I had a lot to offer. But I do appreciate the support. You can see 400,000 views. If I do it next year consistently, we're easily over 1 mil there. 43,000 hours watched. For people to put that much time into me is crazy. Like, I don't know how many collective hours it took to build the Great Wall of China, but if I keep doing it, we would have enough. Like, it's crazy. I love all the support. We're closing on 3,500 subscribers. I don't know when the last time I thanked you guys for subbing was, because for a while there it was like every other video. So I do want to thank everybody right now, whether you've been here since the very start of the channel or whether you're just here watching the end of the video and you're not subscribed. It means a lot, and I do appreciate all the support. You can see in the bottom left, my very first video on the channel didn't even have a thumbnail. That is the thumbnail. It has like 400 views. Just absolutely crazy. You got my best tier list video in the bottom right. That got like 9,000 views. That was a fire video. I love that. You got my best video of the year in the top left, the World Series hitting guide, 30,000 views. Like, that's just crazy. Guys like Rebel don't get that on their hitting videos. Like, it's crazy. I appreciate all the support. And then you got my Extreme. The Extreme video was whatever. It didn't do that great. But the Extreme live stream, who can forget that? 15 and a half hours straight to get Griffey. That was a fun one. It was an insane grind, and I don't know if I would do it again. But it was very fun, especially interacting with the stream and everybody that popped through. I just want to thank you guys for an awesome year. 2023 has been super fire, and I'm looking forward to next year. I'm not saying I'm going to end content, but pretty much all I've got planned for the rest of the year is the Inside the Mind, which I know a lot of you guys do enjoy, but a large majority of the audience isn't here for that. They don't want to see me play the game. They just want my opinions on the game. And this is going to be probably the final video of that kind of subcategory of the channel. But I want to thank all you guys, and I'm just looking forward to hitting the ground running next year with the next show. Until next time, peace.